to shout, I'm sorry, because I don't know what's the matter with the mic. It turns on, but it doesn't amplify. So as I was saying, I was there in 2009, and the city's probably doubled the number of attractions and everything else, but you'll have to do with what I saw, which was, I'm just showing you very selective parts, but it's a fascinating city. So, it's called the Autonomous Region of China, and you know we've talked about several autonomous regions. Tibet, Xinjiang province, a lot of autonomous regions, and this is one of them, which means that China sort of butts out of their business. It's on the southern coast of China there, and southeastern coast actually, and the Pearl River estuary in the China Sea, so that's where it is. And it's known for its skyline, which you'll see lots of pictures of, and the deep natural harbor, so that makes it very exciting, a lot of ships going by. So 4 parts are Hong Kong Island here, Kowloon Peninsula here, the New Territories here, it's an enormous part of it, and the outlying islands, which would include all these islands here. How many of you have not been to Hong Kong?
Not bad.
A few, okay. Anybody more recently than 2009? Probably. Okay. So just for example, that's the skyline, pretty current. It's astonishing when you think about it that so many people are live in these pencil-thin buildings that are hundreds of stories high. Well, I don't know hundreds of stories high. I'm not sure how high they are. And they keep building them, and people keep coming. I just found it astonishing. The transportation network, as you heard from that commercial film, is excellent. It's the best, it's the highest in the world because it covers 90% of the population. If you can imagine such a thing happening in San Diego, it's unimaginable. But you can go from here to here, all on public transportation. It's very cheap, it's very efficient. You saw that she had this one card that she could use for public transportation, for meals, for everything. You just swipe, not even swipe it, just pass it over a receiver. It's such an efficient system, and going to the airport is just beautiful. We don't have, not even begin to have anything like that, even in this country, let alone in California. This is the transportation system, and you can see how extensive it is. And beautiful and clean.
Is it all underground?
Most of it is underground, yeah. And to think how they could even build such a thing, it's astonishing. So there's more than 7 million people there in this little tiny place. It is one of the highest countries for, it's not a country of course, places for income inequality. So there's very rich people there. I saw more exotic cars, Rolls Royces and whatever, than I've ever seen. And then there are very poor areas too. So it's a very high Gini index, which is income inequality. The 10th highest GDP, which is very high. But a very high human development index, which means that people can use their full potential. There's a very high literacy rate, high employment, and people are able to do what they want to do with their potential, which is saying quite a bit. The currency is the Hong Kong dollar, which is the 13th most traded currency in the world. And they speak Cantonese and English and some Mandarin. I hope that's right. Religion in Hong Kong is diverse. Although most people in Hong Kong of Chinese descent follow the Confucian or the Taoist way or Buddhism, mainly in the Chinese form of it. So I went to several temples which were very colorful, very interesting, were having ceremonies. I don't think they were Buddhist. I'm not sure what they were. But as it says, Chinese Buddhism is marked by the interaction between Indian and Chinese religion, which includes Taoism. We have some Chinese people here, so please correct me if I'm making gross errors here, because I don't know what I'm talking about. I just know what I saw and what Wikipedia tells me. So, but the temples were wonderful. Here's so folk religions are practiced, and local gods and ancestors. Here's a celebration of the Moon Festival. It's very much like Japan in the sense that there are festivals all the time, thanks to Shintoism, celebrating different things. So Hong Kong has one of the world's lowest birth rates, 1.11 women of childbearing ages of 2012. So we have the replacement value of 2.1, but they are far below the replacement value, but it doesn't mean that the population is shrinking at all, because they have one of the most long-lived populations in the world. So in 2033, more than a quarter of the population will be over 65. There are also many, many foreign domestic workers in Hong Kong. If you go to the Philippines, you see movies there about mothers who left their children, their families, to work as servants in Hong Kong, and sometimes not in very good circumstances, but also Indonesia and lots of other places. But it accounts for the 4% foreign population there. These kids happen to be holding their something over their faces because of the pollution, which is pretty high in Hong Kong, of course worse in Beijing. They don't call it anchor babies, but that's what it seemed to me, that although at the end of the 20th century Hong Kong had one of the lowest birth rates in the world, there was a fast increase in the number of births between 2001 and 2011. The number of births doubled, and not because of the increase in fertility of Hong Kong women, but because of children being born in Hong Kong to women with residence in mainland China. So it's very much like Mexicans coming here to have their children. So in 2001, 16% of the children born were from mainland, but in later on it increased to 45% of the total births. So the influx from mainland China to Hong Kong is, I would think, a serious problem. I don't really know if it's a problem or not, but a lot of those high-rises that you saw is what they do to accommodate the new people that come, especially to the new territories. Air pollution is a serious problem, but still Hong Kongers have one of the longest life expectancies in the world. Really remarkable. Maybe pollution's good for you, I don't know. Possible. And it's one of the most densely populated areas in the world, as you could imagine from those the cramming in of all those skyscrapers. So 6,300 people per square kilometer. That's astonishing. We don't have anything like that, especially in California. So this is a little history here. After the Opium Wars, Hong Kong became a British colony. Perpetual cessation of Hong Kong Island means essentially that the Chinese keep their hands off Hong Kong in most ways. Not in enough ways for people of Hong Kong, I think. Followed by Kowloon in 1860 and a 99-year lease of the new territories from 1898. Hong Kong remained under continuous British control for about a century until the Japanese occupied it during the Second World War from 1941 to 1945. And then British control resumed after the surrender of Japan. There was a treaty declaration which provided for the transfer of sovereignty in 1997, and that happened fairly peacefully. And the territory became a special administrative region of China with a high degree of autonomy under the principle of one country, two systems. I don't think that's working too well in Tibet, but it seems to be working pretty well in Hong Kong. Although there have been disputes over the misapplication of this principle, which have led to serious protests, including the 2014 umbrella revolution, which was very serious, cost lives, and was a bit of a revolution against the over-control of China. You can look up the umbrella revolution on YouTube and find out quite a bit about it. So there's another skyline picture, and you can see how beautiful the harbor is. So it's a major global trade hub and financial center. It's 10th in GDP per capita, but also has, as I said before, the most severe income inequality amongst any advanced economies. Hong Kong is one of the three most important financial centers from New York, London, and Hong Kong, and the #1 world's tourist destination city. So if you haven't been, you should join the crowd and get over there. The territory has been named the freest market economy. So all this stuff goes on there, and yet people are prosperous and doing well. The economy, characterized by free trade and low taxation, has been regarded as one of the world's most laissez-faire economic policies. So Ayn Rand would just love it there. The Hong Kong dollar is, as I said, the third most traded dollar. It's very fashionable to get your clothes made in Hong Kong. It's relatively inexpensive. They tailor in one day. You can get a full tuxedo, a suit. I got a suit made there. Very nice fabrics and a good price. Very nice service, if you were thinking about getting a suit. There it is at night. It is startling. A lot of these buildings have changing lights and decorative lights. It's quite a sight. Just some of the buildings. The food in Hong Kong is supposed to be the best in Asia. I would agree. It's fabulous. I was talking to some Chinese students the other day and asking them how they liked to live in La Jolla and how San Diego was, and they said, well, frankly, it's a little boring because at 10 o'clock at night, everything closes up. In Hong Kong, everything's just beginning. And that's true in many Asian countries. The night market is bustling with lots of food and lots of things to sell. Very exciting. No wonder it's boring. I mean, Hong Kong is much more interesting. So this is a little travel guide just to point out that all these sites and more are all over these islands, and you can get to them very easily with this wonderful transportation system. There are lots of museums in Hong Kong and Kowloon, beautiful museums. Here's the cultural center. The Peninsula Hotel, when I first went to Hong Kong in the 80s, I was so impressed with it, especially this fleet of Rolls Royces. We don't have that in San Diego either. Very luxurious hotel, beautiful hotel, for example. We went there to have a cup of tea. But I always, initially I didn't think people like this would be allowed in there, but it's democratized. And so regular people go in, they wear hats, they wear regular clothes, and they eat in the beautiful dining room. And this is the view from one of the windows.
Is it bigger than Manhattan?
Help, is Hong Kong bigger than Manhattan? The whole of Hong Kong, I think, is, including the new territories, Kowloon, Hong Kong Island, and the other place I said. I think combined it would be bigger than Manhattan. A lot of gambling going on there. Can you imagine spending the whole day doing that? Well, maybe you can. So this is the view from across from Kowloon. And these buildings, as I said, light up at night in a very interesting way. And even though it looks overwhelming, like how do you get from point A to point B, it's so efficient that you can either hop a bus or a subway or something, and there you are. This is now a tourist boat. There's a lot of parks in Hong Kong and Kowloon. Oops, did I miss the food? I need to do that. This was in a grocery store where you can make your own salad, and there's such a variety of food in there, it was astonishing. My friend was at a meeting, so I took the transportation system to almost the end of the new territories, because I had read about these Buddhist buildings that were there. It didn't take me very long to get there. And there was a festival going on. I'm not sure what was going on there. It wasn't Chinese New Year's yet, but it was very exciting. Beautiful plantings. It looked like a people's temple. There were a lot of just regular people from the new territories there. This is a special celebration that I went to. This is a synagogue in Hong Kong. Sorry to jump from one place to another, but I don't know how else to do this. That I happened to stumble across. And it's a complex with the synagogue, the recreation club, and the community center, which has formed the center of Jewish life in Hong Kong for more than a century. It's a beautiful building. And surprisingly, most of Hong Kong's Jews live only a short distance from the synagogue. It's an example of colonial Sephardic architecture. 2 stories, because women sit upstairs. It's a modern Orthodox, I think they call it. And all around it are these soaring high-rise glass towers. It's amazing. It was erected in 1901 and then it was renovated in 1998 for $6 million. And it's a very beautiful building. There's the interior, which is very much like a lot of the very old synagogues, even the one you find in India that I showed once, and also in some of the Mediterranean, Caribbean islands. But what's interesting is the script. There's Hebrew with a Chinese sort of accent. It comes out beautifully, doesn't it? It's a beautiful calligraphy. And other curiosities, there's of course an IKEA on Hong Kong, but there's nothing that's not on Hong Kong. And apparently dogs foul the sidewalks, so they have to, in a very nice, polite way, tell you not to have your dog foul the sidewalks. There's a big mosque. There's several big mosques. This one is in Kowloon with the Islamic Center. There are tons of art galleries. Hong Kong is one of the best places to buy art, and of course Chinese art, but they're buying up Western art. More interesting, I thought, than the Beijing Art Center, but that was a matter of taste, I think. Interesting buildings. Oh, I forgot this. So it was Christmas time, and downtown was decorated, not elaborately, but enough to know that it was Christmas, which of course is celebrated in Hong Kong. They celebrate everything. Did I forget something? This is the Tiger Balm Garden.
Yeah.
Very elaborate. Tiger Balm is like Vicks that you rub on yourself, but they made a fortune out of it. And they have these interesting sculptures in it. So this is the peak, and it gives you a wonderful view of the city, and also down below this, I'm not even sure what that is. Looks like a temple, but I don't think so. But it's a remarkable sight. Someone is advertising this. I thought you might be interested in case you have somebody that snores. This might be a great invention. And if you go to Hong Kong and you can't find it here, you can get it there. Kindergarten art. It's crowded, and it's so interesting to see all these stores lumped together because they're not only on the ground floor, of course, they can be up on the 5th or 6th floor. We found a great restaurant up on the 5th floor of one of these places that was, I found it in one, I think in Lonely Planet. Delicious food. Hong Kong is where dim sum was started. And the first restaurant that we went to was a dim sum restaurant, but there were no trolleys. You had to order off the menu. And I was terribly disappointed because we had anyway, 2 restaurants in San Diego where you could just pick your food from the trolleys that come around. We don't have them anymore, but so we found out that there was one that still uses the trolleys, and it was jam-packed on Sunday. We had to wait about an hour in line. But there it is. And there's the trolleys with very good food. We have very good food here, so we're very lucky to have very good Chinese food in San Diego, I think. That's dim sum, steamed dumplings and things like that. There are beautiful parks. There's this one park which is an aviary, so all around you hear these birds chirping or calling. They're wild birds and they're tropical birds, like these birds. Then there are places you can go on these turbojets. I chose to go on the harbor tours, which were very picturesque and fun. So now this is a trip to Macau. I'm almost finished, actually. It's very early. How many of you have been to Macau? Everybody? Nobody? Okay. So in 2009, since 2009 it's changed, and I'll try to describe what the changes are, even though I haven't seen them. You land in the middle island, and then you go over a causeway. There's a taxi or a bus or something that takes you to the main island of Macau. It's interesting that this is on the South China Sea, and you know all this controversy about China building whole civilizations on the South China Sea artificially. These are real, I think. I don't think they're landfills, but they are astonishing. So again, it's a special administrative region. It's a small peninsula in mainland China, across the Pearl River Delta from Hong Kong. It was a Portuguese overseas territory until 1999. So it reflects a mixture of Portuguese and Chinese influences. Its giant casinos, which you'll see, and extravagant malls have earned it the nickname the Las Vegas of Asia, except more so, I think. One of its striking landmarks is this tower, the Macau Tower, where you can see the whole city and part of Hong Kong. So there's 636,000 people living in 11.6 square miles, and it is the most densely populated region in the world. Why it doesn't sink, I have no idea. So this is in the first island you come to, and it has a much more Portuguese influence. This is the center square it's quite lovely, and I attribute it to the Portuguese influence. So when you get to Macau, there are lovely temples there and interesting buildings. And
That
first,
tile? Is that tile?
Is it what?
Ceramic tile?
I don't know. I think ceramic tile, yeah, probably. I was quite taken with the Portuguese aspects of this part of the island, and I hadn't seen anything else. So this is what we saw. Beautiful buildings. churches. Temples. This temple is particularly beautiful. And then outdoor eating. It was cold, as you can see. It's December, so, but people eating outdoors, eating very good food. I'm sorry, I don't know what that was. It tastes better than it looks.
Hope so.
This too. And you can walk along these pretty Portuguese sort of architectural streets and come across, there it is actually, that it is tile. Come across these stores that sell Chinese and Portuguese souvenirs. There's always that. And amazing bakeries. Oh my gosh, the bakeries, the Portuguese bakeries were just marvelous, and the Chinese bakeries. So, and the grocery stores. Yum, yum, I'm getting hungry. Here's a very fancily dressed garbage collector. It's very colorful there in the Portuguese.
There's K-Swiss shoes on.
What's that?
Yeah, K-Swiss shoes
So,
on.
we thought that's all there is, and we started asking people how to get a bus back to the other part where you catch the ship. And this young woman said, well, I'll walk you over. This was amazingly naive. And we cut across this sort of hill, and lo and behold, there was the Las Vegas part of Macau, which was absolutely shocking. And this was back in 2009, where there were only half of the hotels that there are now. So it's one of the world's richest cities, higher purchasing power higher than any other country in the world. Of course, it's not a country. The largest gambling center in the world, and Macau is the fourth largest, highest life expectancy. With all that stuff that's going on there, and the pollution and the crowdedness, it's still, people live long. I think it's the Chinese food, actually. And it has a very high human development index, which again is people can do what they want to do and use their potential as human beings. Very impressive. So here's something that's going up. The world's most expensive hotel. You thought it was in Dubai. No, now it's going to be in Macau. I don't know how expensive it is, but if you look at this carefully, it looks like something out of Louis XIV. But this is a private hotel room that you could rent when it opens. So I would advise making your reservations early. I think I think a hotel room is, I don't know, over $1,000 a night, of course. This is the living room. You can see the ceilings painted just like Versailles. It's amazing. It goes without saying there's a lot of money in Macau. So this is the Venetian. And for some reason I had been in Las Vegas fairly recently before this trip. And I remembered the Venetian pretty well. And it's like identical in every way, everything. And they give you these sort of guides so you know where you are. This is the gambling room. So is that, I guess. But actually you have to go through the gambling to get to the main lobby. So this is not St. Mark's Square in Venice, in case you thought it was. It's St. Mark's Square in the Venetian, which is exactly what it says in Las Vegas without the Chinese characters. The same stores, everything. The same gondolas. It's astonishing. Except it's in Chinese, so there you go. A lot of booze, I don't have to tell you that. You can imagine. So these are some of the hotels. I think this is the Venetian, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which hotel that is, but it's phenomenal. and these. And these have come up since 2009. There's a very complex, simple transportation system between these hotels and the main part of Macau, where you get the ship, and buses come in all the time, tons of buses with people from the mainland mostly, to gamble and to stay there, of course. There's thousands of hotel rooms there. The architecture is pretty imaginative. So, as I said, it looks like Vegas, except it's all on a very small piece of land. And these giant casinos opened the Sands in 2004, the Venetian in 2007, 2 years before I got there. It's now the 7th largest building in the world, then the MGM Grand, and many, many more. A megaplex, the Lisbon Palace, is opening in 2017 at the modest cost of $3.9 billion. I think you could build the Pentagon for less than that. So in 2015, they had a big drop in the revenue in Macau. It dropped by almost 50%. They have a currency there called the Pataka, by the way. So it dropped $2.4 billion, the biggest monthly decline ever recorded. And the reasons had to do with the fall in the Chinese economy, and also there was a crackdown on the corruption in the lavish spending that was going on there. Whatever happened to the crackdown, I don't know. I doubt that they couldn't pay off anybody that was doing the crackdown. It's an offshore financial center, a tax haven, and a free port with no foreign exchange control regimens. The cuisine is Cantonese and Portuguese, and of course continental with all these hotels. So I think if there's a V there, I would suggest moving over, because longevity is better and the food's better, and then you can gamble your life away while you're there. So, but the food is definitely better. Excuse me. When we got back to the ferry, there was to the dock, there was a protest, and what they wanted was half price on public transportation with people with disabilities. Whether they got it or not, I don't know. It seems like a modest request. Always difficult to ascertain who has disabilities and who doesn't, so that might have been an obstacle. And people on the ferry taking pictures, of course. So the next place was one of these offshore islands, and Lonely Planet recommended this one, and it was delightful. I don't know how to pronounce it. Chung Chao. And we went by ferry, triple-decker ferry. Lantau Island is in the background. That's a big tourist island with a big statue of Buddha on it. So Chung Chau is 12 kilometers southwest of Hong Kong. It's a small dumbbell-shaped island, no aspersions on what it has there. It's a very nice little island, only 2.5 kilometers in length. 2 big hills linked by a narrow causeway, a population of 25,000 people. And there's some nice hotels there where you can actually stay overnight. Here's what the Chamber of Commerce says. This endearing island, which is full of color, character, and contrast, will prove something of a surprise to many visitors. It was very nice, a little bit of a surprise, yeah. It's a fishing village, which makes it very colorful. And lots of restaurants right on the shore there, so you can overlook the fishermen. Food's very good, especially seafood. And you can see that people live there, obviously, from watching the laundry hung out. I can't remember what this was. It was delicious. It always tastes better than it looks. And all this stuff is going on in this narrow stretch of sidewalk between where people live and where people eat. There's shrimp coming in from the harbor. Fish. I think this is some kind of monkey, I'm not sure. Santa Claus, of course, big there now. Somebody's home. There's the sidewalk, which has all these restaurants, souvenir shops, and then the fishing village is right alongside of it. And there's a beautiful temple on the outskirts. Fishing village. As the sun sets over this charming village, we say, bye for now. So visit Hong Kong for long life and prosperity and great food. So that's the end of the presentation. And if you like, I can go back to this commercial thing where you can see all the sites, the Disneyland and everything else, but I think you can look it up yourself on YouTube. So.